All right, welcome everyone to the second episode of the Climate Interfaith podcast. So with me today, I have my co-host Ying. And
hello.
Yeah, so what exactly is Climate Interfaith? We're a group of youth that kind of got together through a program and, we realized we all care about sustainability, we all care about the climate, and we were all from differing faiths. And we thought, hey, why not we explore how these two topics can come together and help us strengthen the bonds and our passion for both of them. So we have three amazing guests today with us. Yingling, you want to introduce them?
So today we have Master Adrian from the Taoist community, and we have Miss Elyssa Carr from the Baha'i community and Mr. Lawrence Chong from the Catholic community. So thank you for coming and joining us today. I think maybe I can ask a brief introductory question to each of you, maybe starting with Master Adrian. You have brought your youth representative with you today. And we are a group of youths. Maybe I ask you a quick question as the Honorary President of the Taoist Federation of Youth Group. How do you see youth as playing an important role in sustainability and climate action?
Yeah, I think the youth play a very important role in these aspects. They will be our people flowing through the whole generation by generation. So a lot of things which they also appreciate and in terms of what the elderly folks have done for them.
Yep.
And then they're also trying their best to see how they can adapt into the environment in terms of the faith and also trying to have a community of harmony with a different faith itself.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for affirming our role as youths in this two big spheres of climate and interfaith. And so we're really grateful to have you to share more today. And moving on to Miss Elyssa, you'll be playing two hats, as I mentioned. She is a researcher in ISEAS as Yusof Ishak Institute for Climate Change and Food Security. And today our big topic is food. So may I trouble you to give us a brief background of why is food security so important for maybe a country like Singapore, and how maybe your faith role comes into play with this?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. I think, first of all, the food security, it has always been a problem, a challenge throughout history. Civilizations have risen and fallen because of food security. And we are in a very, very fortunate position now. We have actually more food now than any time in history because of the technological advances. Of course, that doesn't mean that it's very sustainable, the way that we've grown our food. In fact, there's a lot of injustice in regards to our food. And the more important thing that we have to consider is that when we have our food is like medicine to us. But because of the abundance of food we have now, we don't treat it like that. We treat it like a consumeristic product. For people in Singapore and for Southeast Asia, we are fortunate to be in a region that has an abundance of food. However, this area is also one of the most vulnerable to climate change. And when, heat wave affects Thailand, it doesn't just affect Thailand, it affects Vietnam, Cambodia, even Malaysia. And all our food supply then becomes an issue. Singapore, we import about more than 90% of our food. So we are very, very, very dependent on the region, as well as, Singapore says it depends on 170 countries. But in actual fact, there's a lot of food concentration. So when we think about food, it's not just about, it's a consumeristic product, but we need to be more vested into where does our food come from? Is it sustainable? Is the way that we treat our food respectful of the communities that it comes from? And that's where, I like to work in this area to highlight some of these challenges that face our food security now.
Yeah, thank you for that sharing. It's really not just about the food, it's about where it comes from, who creates it for us, and how it got to our table, right? So now bringing us to Mr. Lawrence Chong, can you share a bit about your background as the consultor at the Vatican Dicastery for Interfaith Dialogue? I think we are interfaith community here, so I'd like to tap into your experience a little bit, just as an introduction on how we can create this safe space for us to share about interfaith backgrounds and maybe how faith values can lead us into this topic of food security?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. I think in the last decade, religion has actually increasingly played a very active role in climate change. So I think you may have heard of the Rainforest Alliance. You may have heard of various religious groups collaborating. For example, when we talk about green bonds, there are attempts between Christian and Muslims to pool their money together to, direct financing towards climate change, initiatives. So I think there's a lot of awareness among the leaders. There's a lot of work actually among the youth. In the last couple of years in COP, there were many religious youth who were involved in leading. And I want to clarify that the youth of today are not followers. They are running startups, launching funds, they are bringing initiatives. It's not like, I learned from the seniors and then I proceed. That's totally not true, right? We are seeing youth-led initiatives having direct material impact to the environment. So I think the scale is growing, especially in this time and age where ESG is really losing its steam. We need another way to revive it, and I think this is where youth-led initiatives from entrepreneurship, social impact can make an audacious difference, especially when faith leaders may make certain statements, but they may not necessarily have an idea on how to introduce initiatives. And we see that young people have been more concrete in their plans, in their proposals. And I think there's a reverse leading kind of role. It's like faith leaders are endorsing and youth are leading. Right. So I think that's really interesting for me to observe in the interfaith world, right? So you cannot go into a meeting, okay, young people, just listen to, no. We're talking about funds, startups, and I think that's the exciting thing to see that I have witnessed over the last decade in the interfaith world. Yeah.
Awesome. So we have perspective from youth, we have the food security perspective, and we have the interfaith perspective. But before we really get down into the tough questions, I want to ask you this. All three of you had breakfast this morning?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Fantastic. What's your favorite food?
Coffee and toast and egg.
Okay, classic. Yeah?
Yes.
How about yourself?
Actually, I don't have a specific favorite food, though I have favorite cuisines. Southeast Asian cuisine is my favorite. But it really depends on my stomach for the day.
So what did you have this morning?
Oats. Very boring.
Wow.
Fair enough. That's still healthy, important.
My same as Lawrence.
Okay.
Toast bread, the egg, which is a must, and a cup of kopi bread without sugar.
Okay. So when I guess health is a huge concern, right? When we're talking about food. But what about the health of our planet? When you eat your toast, when you eat your eggs, are you actually thinking whether it's ethically sourced? Is that a question that even runs through your mind in the first place? And what does it mean to have food that's ethically sourced? What's your thoughts?
Well, it happens to me one of the day. It was not much of stress and on work itself. Now I was eating my breakfast. Now start to think of it. Hey, day to day, thousands of people are eating eggs.
Yeah.
How does this egg came about? Is it being artificially processed and all that stuff, which is not from nature? In the good old days where we had our hen, kampong, the hen and all those things, they just lay one egg a day. But now it's thousands over and millions over eggs a day.
True.
So this is the process which I keep in thinking of. Is there a chain of the type of food processing being done as on these aspects?
If you allow me to have a roundabout way of sharing this. So I lived in Cambodia for many years. And the reason I went there was because I decided in the Baha'i world, we have a concept called Youth Year of Service. And I was already getting late in my 20s and I haven't done my Youth Year of Service yet. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to go. And it just so happened that there was an opportunity in Cambodia. So I went there. And me being a city girl, born and bred in the city, first in KL, then in Singapore, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I mean, rural areas are very different, especially in Cambodia. And I moved in there and not having a lot of expectations. I was a bit blurred in my youth. But I learned so much from the farmers. I learned so much about where our food comes from, how it's processed, how it's grown. And later on, I even had my own farm. I ran my own farm in Cambodia. And it's amazing what it means to ethically grow food. There's so much unethical practices, putting in dyes to make the food look good because that's what they think consumers want, and that's what many middlemen, the middle part of the value chain, tell us that consumers want. Putting chemicals into our foods, whether it's fertilizers or inputs, other pesticides and all that. There's a lot of that. And my area in Cambodia, I was doing capacity building for people within the rural areas. And it's a bit sad, but education is not very high there. So they accept and believe a lot of what they're told. Not always, but by and large, people can be very convincing. So it's not their fault also that food farmers, that put the wrong inputs into their food. So from there, it became very clear to me that our food system, there was something wrong. I'm an urban planner by training, actually. Right. So going from urban planning into food security is a huge jump. And the reason why I moved into it was because I saw that our food system was just so unsustainable and
it is
underinvested. And I think faith definitely has a huge role to play in this. The Baha'i faith says that you have to treat all creatures with fairness and justice. And that doesn't just go for human beings, but also for animals. Do not burden an animal more than it can bear. And also for the flora of it all, the plants. We are not really, the way that we farm, the way that we grow our food, are we respecting, are we giving due justice and fairness to what we are farming? That's where the ethics come into it.
No, yeah, you've covered the faith part of it as well. But before we get into the faith deeply, Ms. Lawrence?
Well, I mean, because my day job is implementing impact investment, and I had to do a lot of due diligence on how people, based on what they claim and what they do, right? So you do know too much crap. It's going on. No. I'm sorry, yeah, right. And why certain produce and so I have a heightened awareness that if I do the marketing and my wife is not, my wife leads that most of the time, and I think I learned a lot from my wife because she's very particular about the sourcing and everything, and so for eggs particularly we buy local. Right? Okay. So because of what I know, but I think Singapore doesn't really have a practice as a consumerism, what they call ethical consumption. Right? When almost 2 decades ago when my wife and I were in Seattle for our honeymoon, what was really interesting was the restaurant said it as a matter of fact. This is a farm fish, this is a non-farm fish, this is low stock, depleted stock, right? So you have to be careful in your choices. So they help you make a very ethical decisions as a norm, not as a kind of a marketing gimmick. And then when they were telling you the produce, this is a locally farmed produce. Any cafe, it's not Starbucks, it's all these, craft cafes, So it's a whole mindset shift, right? And my bigger job in my work, right, is to try to bring about this new inclusive economy concept called economy of communion. And the idea of economy of communion rests a lot on this idea of, do you care enough for another human person in order to do an economic exchange on the basis of dignity and love? Now, I would argue that there is no bloody dignity and love, in how we consume.
It's very transactional.
It's a hand of a farmer, that nurtures that vegetable and that egg that you eat, right? So it's actually a very inhumane way that we just buy and consume, right? Thoughtlessly. And I think that, but okay, you can't really bring about that shift just on the basis of advocacy. Frankly speaking, if there's no positive legislation, in that, but then the trouble I see is that ESG is becoming a downtrend on level importance, right? Come on, we're dealing with the war in Gaza and Ukraine. Who cares about the planet, And this is sad because it's an ongoing issue. It is one of the most complex crises that we can actually solve.
Yeah.
We have all the money and technology to solve climate, but we are not solving it by decision. So it's the same as consumption. it's a decision factor. It's nothing to do with whether we have the means to do it, whether the technology to do it, whether the know-how to do it. Because in the past, food gets in the country. I was in Xinjiang. There's no such thing as custom control. You coming from the West, you trade with China. They don't check the quality of the produce and everything. There is no excuse. Every food is tagged. You know where they come from, But of course, there are very unethical ways to cheat, right? What we call normalize the system. Say they come from slave boats. It's very easy to sell to a normal distributor and convert a slavery-led fishing, those kind of stuff, right? Or what we call mixing it up, the grain, so that, largely are normal fruits and vegetables, and then there are those that come from. This is quite known in the supply chain, the abuses of the supply chain. But what I mean is that generally, we know enough. And it's a crime against ourselves and the planet not to know then when it comes to the moment of decision making. Right. So I'm constantly seeing this happening. We really don't have a lot of excuse for a lot of things. We don't have excuse for war. We don't have excuse for climate crisis because it's a solvable problem. But people, we don't have enough right leaders to make those, what we call sensible decisions for the future.
I see. Thank you for bringing that passion.
It's my nature. I mean, I'm way past the frustration, but I'm just, everywhere I go, I tell that, poverty is solvable today. We have more than enough money. Hunger is solvable today. War is solvable today. We have never been the most endowed generation in the whole of humanity. Never had we so much wealth and power. Information. You cannot say
it's in abundance.
Come on, if you use ChatGPT, you learn a lot about your food chain. To be very honest, you can tell just on eggs alone, right? Why is Singapore trying to make sure we have egg independence? Because we had issues in Malaysia, we had all these things, and this is a solvable problem, right? But I think the more difficult question we need to ask ourselves is, do we care enough? If you don't care enough, a lot of things are not solvable.
Yeah.
If you care enough, a lot of things are solvable. Right. So that's the area I'm in all the time, economy and communion, right? That just people don't bother enough. Yeah. That's why things are less left to fester and die.
Thank you for bringing that personal perspective of how, individual consumers actually can demand more. And so maybe can we dig deeper into that? Like what we've talked about, how like ethical sourcing, what it means to us, what it means for our food system. And we've also touched on how the system fundamentally is unsustainable and it requires some design shifts at a higher level. But maybe can we ground ourselves back with our faith values and share a bit about how does maybe your faith influence how we choose to eat and how we eat on a day-to-day basis? Maybe that can help us pull back the curtains on asking ourselves why we care about our food and why will we care enough to demand more about our food story. Maybe Master Adrian, we start from you.
Okay. It comes once upon a time, we met up with one of the old masters from China. Okay. And then we were having meal in Singapore. So we know that he's a full vegetarian person. So we start to guess the restaurant to prepare those smoked duck, or then we will start to introduce, this is the smoked duck and all this thing. And various style of foods. And you know what happened? He gave us a scolding. He said, when we talk about vegetarian, your mind is not set to be a full vegetarian. So what it means in the good old days when we talk about vegetarian is pure natural vegetables and nothing of this kind. These are all preserved food. These are all done by people, processed by technology or processed by preservative and all that stuff. Right. It's not good for your health. And also not good for your mind. Because when you talk about full vegetarian, you are going for a plant model or plant meal, so-called plant-based meal, so-called. So if you still had the mind of, this food resemble a chicken or a duck, then your mind are not set. Your mind is not peace, not at ease and not peaceful. So what he inculcated to us is that we have to, as far as possible, if we take any vegetarian meals, we have to be cautious that we have to be grateful for the food being done naturally, and also to give thanks to the people who actually process these foods, produce these foods. At the same time, don't think of the food related to animal or some sort, so that to have your peace of mind. So what we try to stress is in Taoism, we stress about the yin and yang, which is striking a balance. So we have to maintain the balance of our body, mind, and the spirit.
Okay. Well, it's the fact that processed or mock meat is not vegetarian. Well, a lot of youth might. It's a very hard struggle, isn't it? Because when you're trying to get people non-vegetarians to then swap, and now you have all these alternate proteins. You have the impossible meats and stuff like that. But then based on what you mentioned, then you're not exactly at the clear path. You're not having a clear mind yet if you're still thinking about those kind of options.
Yes, you're right.
Okay, fair enough. How about your perspective? Yeah.
In terms of food, how religion talks about food, I think of it as a parent to a child, right? So I'm a new mother. I have a 16-month-old daughter.
Congrats.
And being, a more maybe educated mother, you have all these stresses about how am I going to make sure she eats healthily and all that. So I've educated myself. And, I found out the first 1,000 days of a child's life is the most important. It sets its life on a path of health or whatever. That when 1,000 days starts from conception, so it means the mother as well. So when I was pregnant, for example, I had to figure out how am I going to eat healthily. And of course, now because I'm also breastfeeding, how am I eating to make sure my child has the right food? And I think that is how religion also sees, God also sees its child in the sense to humanity. How can religion give guidance to ensure that people actually are able to live in a healthy way, to fulfill the purpose in life? And we all say the purpose of everybody is to bring about an ever-advancing civilization. Everybody has that responsibility. So it's not just one or two different leaders, it's everybody. So how do we make sure that we can meet our maximum potential? And that is through ensuring we ourselves are healthy, both in mind and spirit. As exactly what Master Adrian was saying, how do you make sure you have a clean body? In terms of what we are not allowed and not allowed to eat, there's no specific restriction because everybody is different.
Right.
But we are encouraged to, as I said before, not burden the animals. So whole foods, making sure that you eat more plant-based diets are actually encouraged. And I personally think that whole foods, and especially local foods, are very important. And when I was in Cambodia, I was there for 4 years in a rural area, and you'd think, maybe there's no hygiene there or whatever. But I was the healthiest I was ever in my life. I was not the most healthy kid. I was very snotty and all that kind of thing. But when I went there, even though there's dust, it's a very dusty place, I was healthy. I didn't have any health issues 4 years that I was there. And the reason I think about it was because I was always in excess of local foods. Local foods that came from the market that didn't have refrigeration. There was no processing. Right. My market was really, all the fish was on the floor. You pick it out of the bucket. You ask them to clean it there. The chicken was, slaughtered that morning. The vegetables were probably freshly picked. And those foods made me healthy and really made me realize how important it is to have local foods that high in nutrients, because that nutrients are retained and you are actually able to eat it to your body when you have that. So that's mine.
Like being close to the source of your food.
That's right.
Actually, it's like bring us back to the village, right?
Like you only eat what you grow, right? And you don't, your demand doesn't exceed the supply. So it's a very careful balance that you're talking about where you're not demanding too much out of the nature that's kind of enriching your lives. How about your perspective?
Well, I think the almost 20 years I've been involved in interfaith, it's kind of fascinating that all religions are agricultural religions.
Yep.
The Christian calendar is around agriculture. Actually, we don't know whether Jesus was born on the 25th of December, to be very honest. Right? So it's the whole cycle of the Christian calendar, the Islamic calendar, and so many faith uses food, the produce of the land, to moderate your faith, what you should eat, what you should not eat, the whole idea of fasting. So I would say that the challenge in the 20th century or the late 19th century, when there was industrialization and mass production, the unhinging of religion from the land, the unhinging of religion as a idea away from agriculture is where it's our biggest problem, right? Because actually, if you talk about circular economy, from all cultures, all religion, they were always circular. Because there is this notion that God has given you the lay of the land, and you should only take from it what has been provided to you by God's grace and not more. And that there is a lot of this. In a lot of faith, this is very common to talk about common good, and it's a real common good, right? That, for example, Christian festivals were organized where all the farmers will bring their produce. I mean, today's farmers market actually came from those Christian feasts, right? To come and bring the produce as a praise to the Lord because you had a good harvest. And, but of course now in the age of consumption, we are taking them as collectibles, right? So I think we have to accept, we have to confront a new religion overtook the common precepts of all religion. Right. The new religion of mass consumption, mass accessibility to food, actually negated the secularity which was inherent in all religion. Because you don't, like for example, now in Nigeria, we are working on a project with thousands of Nigerian farmers. They're doing regenerative agri. And ancient wisdom is really always better than today's so-called fast and quick solutioning, right? And they were teaching us a lot because our partner obviously is the agricultural expert, not us. I mean, we are looking at the investment and all these things and how to help them. But the one thing I learned is if we actually went back and have a little bit more respect over the ancient practices, even our own religion, what does it mean to have bread? Bread is not instant. It's not bought in the supermarket. You made bread. Yeah. And in fact, I always tell Christians this, and they may not like it, that after Jesus, went to heaven and the early Christians ate, they couldn't buy bread from the supermarket. They probably had to come together and make bread. And that slowed down the whole worship, if you think about it, right? Because they had to break bread. They were literally having a meal. It's not like today, like a factory, you go and receive the Eucharist, So that slowing down, that taking time, that intentionality of religion is not happening in religion today. In fact, religion is almost seen like a business today. Okay, I go to pray. I only got this time to pray. Don't ask me to pray more. So every clergy knows this from all religion. From Muslims to Christians, if the pastor, spoke more than what is needed, right? The kappa, So this is a very consumerism approach, kind of. I've done my bit. I've done my shopping. I need to go this. Right? So we have reorganized our schedule around the religion of consumerism and not the religion of life, which all religion actually originally began. Because, for example, the Christian Mass, the reason why you have to do it at sunrise was because when you wake up, you honor God. And after that, you go to the farm.
Right.
So there's a reason for going for early Mass every day, because you have the chance to honor God and then you go to the farm, right? But that is totally not, even Christians are not very aware, right? But if you look at the whole centrality of many religions, like I was very impressed with the Sikhs. And they were telling us on this free food for people. It is part of their religious experience, because Sikhism is a very change-making religion. And Sikhism believes idealistically and practically that it is their mission to feed those in need. And everyone's sitting down together with that commonality. And I was so impressed many times when I'm in the Sikh temples and I said, this is how the common good. This is the idea of the economy of communion. Right. Yeah, I care enough for another human being. I will share a meal next to you without the need of payment and favor. But it's very agricultural practice as well, because the way it's cooked, mass kitchens, in order to serve masses of humanity. And I thought that as something to be, if we really want to confront the climate crisis, we do have to confront the onset of mass production, mass consumerism, right? And the way we measure economics, because the economy is still measured on the basis of consumption. If you consume less, the economy is doing badly, Yeah. So we actually do not allow economics to be circular. Because our economic theory is still, you must eat more.
It's a line.
If you don't buy more, our economy is going down,
Yeah.
So if we continue to have that metric, we will never be circular. We will never go back to because why would you need to overeat in the village that is producing? I mean, you go on and on, Muslim, Christians, even I was very impressed by a Hindu friend who told me the idea of food in Hinduism. Right, it's a very spiritual thing. It's the act of eating, the act of consuming is a very spiritual thing. It's not about feeding yourself, right? So I think really confronting the mass consumerism religion is what we need to be critical in, and to go at it. Yeah,
we've gone into quite a lot of depth in terms of what different religions talk about. And thanks so much for sharing, all three of you. But I want to go back to a slightly lighter note on, right now, we all want to eat organic food, right? Everyone says, okay, let's eat locally sourced food, organic food. And then organic food turns out to be very expensive. And let's say youth like us, we are studying, we're just getting into the working force. And then all of a sudden it's a struggle, right? To even buy these vegetables, to cook for yourself, it's a struggle. On top of this, you say, oh, you got to buy organic vegetables. It's a extra strain on your financial resources. And like you said, the metrics that we use for economic growth is very lopsided. It doesn't support our climate change position as well. So on that case, how do youth then take a stance on this? How can we, given our limited resources and our position in society at this point, until we eventually, get much older and have those resources, at this point, what can we do to have a better access to these organic food in that sense? Or rather, even before that, if you take a step back, how do we inculcate that knowledge within the youth to even care and even go for such food? And the interest, it all starts with interest, right? Without interest, no one's going to do anything. So what do you think would be the first step that we need to take? Either be it with faith or outside of faith, what's the first step that we need to take?
I can start. Yeah. To me, actually, the organic versus non-organic it's not necessarily an important question. Organic food, if you can afford it, great, because there are a lot of ethical practices that are practiced through organic food. However, I think the more important is eat within your means, but don't waste. Our challenge is that we tend not to understand where our food comes from, therefore we don't respect it, therefore we waste just because we can, or it's our personal preference. If we can just address this issue of waste, eat only what you want, what you can. Don't eat until your stomach is full. In fact, you should only eat about 80% of what you can eat for your stomach to be full. Or making sure that the food that you have are just whole foods so that it's not processed, because every time it's processed, you actually have a lot more waste. So by doing all of these, and also getting involved in a community garden, compost all your organic waste, eat more at home, eat with your families, eat with your friends. If you can all just do all of these, reduce the amount that you spend on creating waste. I think that actually is enough. And I think this is a very achievable thing that youth can do. First of all, it reduces your expenditure.
For sure.
But more importantly, it also connects you with getting to know your food better.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, because I think that was kind of my own story as well. Like thinking of food and also mentioning waste, compost is a very good way for you to feel that circularity with our food system. When you start to be able to see how your food waste can go into the ground and become food that you can eventually eat, then that's that mini circular process that you're creating for yourself. What about Master Adrian?
I think these days youth tends to be, even my son himself, they tends to don't know the timing of eating. It's just like I have a breakfast, then an hour later you'll start to have enough. So it's excessive of consumption itself. So it's very unhealthy. And in fact, we will have to inculcate more thoughts to them, to education or to various aspects, or to purpose interference. So to a certain extent, we have to really educate them to really understand the source of food, what's the meaning of it and how it came about, and whether it helps you to create in Taoism, they call it the qi. It's the energy, the life energy. Encompasses we bring three elements together, which is the power of the commercialism. So we can have the heaven, earth, and humanity. So in Chinese, they call it 天地人和, always have this concept itself. So we have to really consume whatever is being grown and also to know the effect of it. Okay, a lot of times in the old civilizations, Chinese civilization itself, or even agriculture aspects, people are very particular about the seasons. So it's like during the summer times when it's very hot, then we should not take heaty stuff. These are common practice in the good old days, but it's not done here. So during hot weathers or very humid weathers, or even in Singapore, we don't have a summer, but we also quite exemplary to the summer aspect itself. We tend to consume heaty food, fried stuff and all stuff, and get you ultimately. So come to winter, during the end of the year where things have been cooling, then that's the time where you need to have some energy, like the natural herbs and all that stuff. I think these days youth avoid natural herbs. Okay, the one is like those processed foods, nutritions and all that stuff. These are processed foods, okay, with a mixture of other ingredients itself. And going back to the good old days where we talk about leftover food, we actually leave it outside and we have a group of people or company to come and pick it up and recycle into the farm. The farming where they feed to the pigs and all that stuff. So it's a sense of recycling aspects. In the modern days now, people are starting to practice food digesters and all stuff. These foods basically channel into what we call some of the waste collection companies to be recycled as fertilizer. So these are the effort I will see growing, but we need a lot of effort from the youth itself also. Okay, these are the knowledge which they have to share from the older folks, which they have experience in it. I was sharing Baba just now. I was in the WAMRAS, which is resemble Waste Recycling Association of Singapore. So we also know of this few of the companies actually do this processing from the food digester into the recycling plant itself to make it into fertilizer. Okay, the most recent case was I know it actually start to produce food itself, which I don't think a lot of people will take it.
It's a stretch a bit too far. But thanks for sharing. Yeah, that knowledge gap, the education gap, it should definitely solve the ignorance that some youth have, right, today. How about yours? What do you think?
Well, I think the youth of today don't have an excuse. They have all the access to technology, their own networks to lead the change. I mean, the early generation have tried, but too many people make a lot of excuses. It's full of excuses. So I think if you really want organic food, it's the economics problem. How do you make it viable? Right. So you can say, I want organic food. For example, our 20 by 30 is an absolute failure to date. Land price is too expensive, right? So how to grow? So I think it is on you, I would say, to lead and to say that, look, I think we need to take a crack at this situation because you have to deal with the consequences in a very real way. I don't think it's about organic food. I think it's a fundamental question on how do we make local farming work? How do we make a less dependency on exports? Because it is both a security threat. It is both, it doesn't make sense. How can we reimagine the idea of farming? I mean, you have community farms, but, I always see a half-ass work that, they try and then they, it's a lot for optics, right? Sometimes, right? So the volume is just not enough, right? So we cannot kid ourselves. If we are talking about near supply chains, we really have to talk about near supply chains. So, and I think youth have a genuine ability to ignite passion and action, right? Rather than the senior folks. Because senior folks, after a while, I've done this before, it doesn't work and all this, right? So when you hear people say that, right, that's it. There's no more room for innovation, right? And I think this is the time for the practical idealism of young people. There is no better time because there's no excuse. You have knowledge, power, information, networks. You don't need permission from anyone. And if you look at the average age of a startup reaching $1 billion, it used to be 30 years, then it became 20 years, and it became 10 years. Now it's 5 years, and then 3 years. All led by young people. Now, I think we need the audacity. I think Singapore, you sometimes ask too much permission. I think we cannot ask permission. We have to just do it, right? If you look at the Chinese, you look at the Americans, and you look at the startups that's coming up from other places, right? They just do. They don't ask permission, right? So I think we need to really go after the issue. I think if you go and investigate it, there are very fundamental reasons why organic food is not, accessible, right? And you just have to go at the numbers. But I don't think we have enough people trying to go after the problem. That's my issue. That it's a problem. I always joke, when people say in the church, I'll pray for you. That means they're not going to do anything, right? Because even the early missionaries, they were not just about praying for you. There's no school. The nuns, without money, they will find a way to build a school. That was the audacity, the entrepreneurship of the early missionaries, right? So I think we need young people to be missionaries of change for the climate. And don't wait and don't ask for permission. Just go ahead and try to go after the problem. Because it's different from the old days. Old days, I don't know enough. I can't organize myself. I can't organize. Look at the way you guys are organized. You can self-organize. You can look at even this. I mean, my generation wouldn't do things like that. I don't think we have I don't think we are ready. We don't have the audacity to go and do this kind of programs, right? So you have a lot of access. I mean, if you do in real numbers, right, your reach to audience is, compared to the earlier generations, is much higher. So now the question is that if you have so much access to information, capability, networks, and you can self-organize with young people across the world, all at once. So why can't you do an organic food economy across the world? And then if you go with just 1% of people who actually follow you, go with it. I mean, that's what we tried. One time I was with almost 100,000 young people around the world. It was a crazy idea. We were in Religions for Peace. Our pitch then, my generation, was to tell the world's government to just reduce their military spending by 10%. And then we will solve extreme poverty. Then in those days, it was called Millennium Development Goals. Now it's SDG, So actually, the United Nations doesn't change much, They just rebrand stuff. So we went to 120 nations, to the parliaments, to ask them to consider reducing their spending. Guess how many countries signed up?
You tell me.
Costa Rica, country without military, sign up, yes. They'll reduce their military spending.
From zero to -0.
Nobody, not even Singapore. Not even Singapore, right? To contribute to allocate. Of course, Singapore has good excuse because our defense budget is one, but we are well financed on what you call our education and food, right? So I think it's fine. But most countries, nobody wanted to answer the youth on that. And so we collected 20 million signatures. We presented at the United Nations. Everyone ignored us. So, but just to say that if I were to do it differently, I looked at that. That was an advocacy project. I should not have done an advocacy project. I should have gone after the arms manufacturers. I should have gone after measuring the economic damage they bring by the increase and the excessive buildup of arms. But we made a mistake, right? So we were too idealistic, but a little bit naive. But I see the young people of today very differently. That you guys are very precise in your understanding of certain issues and you should just do it, right? So I think cheap organic food is viable. I mean, I've seen it in Nigeria, it's doable. But you cannot be hoping to get it from consumption. Right? You have to rewire the whole, and you must be prepared to rewire because I think supply chains will be disrupted, whether it's Donald Trump or what, because of war, whatever issues. I mean, we have the war in Ukraine, bread prices went up. We had COVID was another shock to the system, right? So I think the young people just need to be more realistic. I always say, actually, we are not idealists. We are more realist than the idealists because we see the problem. Right. And this is going to be the problem you will inherit. So I would say, please lead us. Because the older generation, full of excuses, we cannot agree everything. But here, you don't care, just do.
So we got to start off by firstly filling up that gap of ignorance, like you mentioned, then changing our whole, way of thinking itself, the way we live, right? Instead of that consumerism religion, we got to move away from that to just respecting the planet, caring for it, and just taking what we need, right? Like you mentioned as well. And then ultimately, once we have those tools, we're equipped with that lifestyle and the knowledge, just go out and start changing the way our food security issue works as a whole, right?
I really appreciate that push for us that we shouldn't ask for permission to change. Thanks for kicking us back into the driver's seat and taking this food security issue onto our backs. And I mean, just to reiterate for your initial mention of community gardens, I think that's what some youths I know in Singapore are trying to do. We're not going to accept that, we have only 1% of land in Singapore that is available for food. Yeah. So in my community gardens, I'm actually eating farm to table every day. Yep. And we have that close to, and it's possible. Yeah. And it took me like 1 year of just, volunteering to see what's possible by actually doing it. So
you see?
Maybe
you're leading already. You're leading already. So exactly. So don't ask for permission. Just do it. It's possible.
Just do it.
So I wanna wrap this up because we have discussed so many different things at this point. But I want to wrap it up by asking something a bit more personal, which is, what is your favorite ritual that you do before you consume food? Right? It can be related to your faith. It can be something that you just do to give thanks to whoever that prepared it. What do you guys do from the different religions?
Okay, in Taoist aspects, we don't really do prayers before a meal, but it's up to individual. As for my case, I do occasionally or just pause for a while and thought of the people who actually possess it. And also, first of all, must thanks the nature the God to have given us these resources to have the food on our table.
Yep.
Okay, the next one will be our parents who actually been the means to us to feed, and then to not only feed us, feed the next generation and also their community itself. Everyone we also want to best them to have the same meal we have, so that everyone equal and everyone are balanced and everyone will be healthy.
That's nice. That's nice. Thanking everyone who is part of that supply chain and
the supply chain, the ecosystem itself
that made the food possible to be on our table. Yeah.
I have to admit, we don't have any specific rituals similar to Master Adrian was saying. We do feel that, food is something that brings us together. It is everybody has to eat. It's an important part of our life, important part of the day, and we should respect that day, that part of the day. And so we have community gatherings, and I'm very grateful that the Baha'i community is very keen on meals, having meals together. And we have something called a 19-day feast. We meet together every 19 days to discuss what's going on in the community, and we'll also have a meal together. And, I've had this since I was a kid. And in fact, it was the reason why my parents became Baha'i, actually. The Baha'i faith actually is not a very old religion. It's only about 200 years old. We're actually celebrating its 75th year in Singapore now this year. And my father became Baha'i in India when he was there to study medicine. He was a poor scholarship student, and people would invite him to their homes for meals. And of course, free meals. I'll go. Eventually that led to him becoming a Baha'i. But, it was the meals that were the most important thing that brought him to the faith at that time. And the same with my mother as well. And so meals, they bring people together. They open up the mind. They allow conversations to flow. These are very important parts of community building. Youth should also make sure that, they take that into your daily life, make sure that every meal you're able to open up communities. I think that's where I feel food enriches our communities.
It's not just for yourself, right? It's not just about your hunger, but rather, how can you then use that as an opportunity to connect with more people, and then respecting it in its own way. That's nice.
Yeah, I think for the Catholic faith, food is the centrality of the worship itself. I mean, every mass that we attend, you are told that you are consuming God, and that is everything else is an extension of that, right? So before meals, one of the reasons why we say we give you thanks, Almighty God, for the food that we're about to receive from thy bounty, through Christ our Lord, Amen, is because there is a continuum of what you receive and what you eat. Land, people, and God. There is a holy continuum of what you eat. And that's why it's really important to be intentional with food. And in fact, gluttony is a sin in the Catholic Christian tradition, for that reason, right? And unfortunately, the religion of mass consumerism promotes gluttony, right? And I think I often reflect deeply about my roots. I mean, I'm a Christian, I'm a Chinese, I'm also, my dad is from Penang. And when you look at it from that lens, and then I'm born in Singapore. My father migrated here, especially when meals are there to celebrate union in the family, to celebrate, someone, arriving at a milestone, right? Right. Then food is actually a servant to our being and our collective being, right? So I think that is what I try to be grateful for. Especially recently, I had a health scare. Oh. So me and my wife, we were eating slowly because of the health care, and it really made me very grateful to be able to eat and to be with my wife, right? So I think that intentionality is actually a good thing, because we tend to want to. I eat very fast, unfortunately, right? So because I had to slow down, I had to chew properly and everything. That is a nice thing to that consuming the food is also part of an intentional experience.
Yeah, thank you for that. And hope your health scare has been passed.
Yeah, it's okay.
But thank you for the sharing. I think it was a really very informative and grounding session. I think it really took us to, thank you for, sorry. There was a lot to take in.
Yeah, a lot of information, a lot of different perspectives, right? And putting it all together and then having that reflection. Like, now that you mentioned, when we have lunch later, we should probably eat slowly as well.
Yeah.
Right. But that's it. Thanks so much for coming down today, sharing your perspectives on the youth, on food security, right? How we should be eating, what we should have in mind while we're eating, and also how our different faiths play a very important role in putting all of this together, and how it can even enrich that experience that we have. So,
sorry, can I just add one thing?
Oh, yeah,
sorry.
Sure.
I wanted to just highlight that, Singapore does have very good farmers.
Yeah.
And they are some of the most resilient people in Singapore. I mean, if you have a chance, go down to the farms, listen to their stories. They have gone through a lot to stay farmers here in Singapore today. So respect the farmers here, and also, if you can, buy local. It's very good.
Yes.
Do you have any suggestions on where we could get affordable local?
You can get local food in all of our supermarkets, actually. Although Sheng Siong, hats off to them, they have just started a section that highlights local food. This is just in the last few days.
We are not sponsored by
I saw it I've seen it in the news. I haven't gone down there myself. But you can find the SG local food label on all the local foods. And so, even so, if you can't find that specific local food, there's also food from Malaysia that, in farms nearby.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Got one word, just one statement from perspective. Okay, to all of us, I quote the Tao Te Ching, one of the very significant terms they use. He who knows he has enough is rich. So I encourage all of us, including ourselves and the youth, to constantly remind ourselves what we only consume to live lightly, and also to consume what is necessary. And with that, we will overcome things like overcoming the heavy consumption and harming the earth, just to satisfy our endless desires.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think it really wraps up how faith is really kind of the values and gives us the values in choosing how we eat and why we eat. So thank you for sharing about how faith gives us the perspective of balance, and how Baha'i community gives us the perspective of caring about where our food comes from, and also being more, hands-on in that. And also for your sharing on how the commodification of food is really also bleeding into the commodification of our religions. So I hope we have come to the end of this session. Thank you so much for spending your morning with us, and let's have a great lunch afterwards.
Yeah. See you, everyone. That's a wrap.